Scattered across Russia are megastructures so massive, so precise, and so out of place that even today's archaeologists can't agree on who built them, or how colossal stone chambers carved with surgical precision. Perfect spirals built on frozen islands, mountains covered in balanced megaliths, and burial mounds so massive they look like man-made hills, hiding something we were never meant to uncover. These weren't built by empires or kingdoms or any civilization we can name. Were built by someone else thousands of years before history begins. Tonight we're stepping into the shadows of Russia's most forbidden structures, and nothing about them is what you think. The Dolmens of the North Caucasus rise quietly along the slopes and river valleys of southern Russia, scattered from the Black Sea coast to the foothills of the mountains. And at first glance they seem deceptively simple, like small stone houses left behind by an ancient people whose name has long since vanished. Yet, the closer you look, the more impossible these megalithic structures become. What begins as a landscape dotted with low stone chambers quickly turns into one of the densest collections of prehistoric megaliths in all of Eurasia, where more than 3,000 dolmens lie aligned to cardinal directions. Carved with geometric precision and fitted with round entrance portals that look as if they required tools far beyond what archaeologists believe existed. 5,000 years ago, each dolmen is built from massive slabs of sandstone or limestone, some weighing several tons, shaped perfectly flat surfaces, and assembled with joints so tight that even modern instruments struggle to measure the tolerances. Excavations reveal careful layering beneath them. Foundation stones arrange on level beds of crushed gravel, drainage channels carved underneath to keep interiors dry, and pathways leading toward each structure as if they were designed for ritual use rather than simple burial. Many contain circular or polygonal chambers, often sealed with stone plugs that weighs, and some display intricate spiral motifs or raised knobs carved directly into the slabs. Hints of a symbolic language whose meaning remains unknown. Radiourban samples from nearby settlements suggest these dolmens belong to the early Bronze Age, roughly 3000 to 2000 BCE, making them older than most European megalithic tombs. Yet what remains most difficult to explain is the sheer consistency of the construction style across vast distances, implying a shared blueprint or centralized cultural knowledge that should not have existed in small, scattered mountain tribes. Archaeologists point to similarities with dolmens from Brittany, Korea, and India, but the North Caucasus structures stand apart for their architectural precision, unusual round porthole entrances, and the chemical traces of pigment found inside, suggesting that rituals once took place in glowing painted chambers lit by torchlight. Some dolmens show evidence that enormous blocks were quarried kilometers away, uphill on steep terrain that would challenge even modern machinery, while others sit perched on cliffs with panoramic views of the valleys below, creating alignments that researchers argue may correspond to solstices or star positions. Yet despite decades of study, contradictions continue to unravel neat explanations. Human remains inside the dolmens vary widely in age, often separated by centuries from the dolmen's construction. Some chambers contain no burials at all. In many cases, complex dolmens appear in areas where no settlements existed nearby, raising questions about who built them, for whom, and why. Geological surveys reveal that certain dolmens required stone-cutting techniques far more advanced than simple chiseling. Traces of uniform curvature on the circular portals may indicate the use of drilling or rotary tools, while the joinery of multi-slab dolmens suggests knowledge of leverage, torque, and load distribution that should have been beyond Bronze Age pastoralists. Other contradictions emerge when comparing them to global megalithic cultures. Caucasus dolmens appear suddenly in the archaeological record without evolutionary stages or precursor designs, as if a fully formed architectural tradition emerged overnight and then disappeared just as abruptly. Even more puzzling are the magnetic anomalies recorded around several dolmens, which some researchers attribute to natural mineral deposits. Yet others insist correlate too cleanly with the dolmen layouts to be accidental, hinting that the builders selected sites for energetic or geomantic reasons. These inconsistencies fuel competing theories. Some scholars believe the dolmen served as ancestor shrines where communities placed symbolic items instead of bodies, while others propose astronomical observatories that used the circular portals to track celestial movements. Fringe researchers suggest resonant acoustics, noting that humming or speaking through the porthole produces amplified vibrations inside the chamber, creating an eerie echo that may have been used in ancient rituals. A few scientists argue that the dolmens were not tombs at all, but markers for longue distances, trade routes running through the Caucasus, acting like stone lodges or ceremonial checkpoints for caravans moving between the Black Sea and the Near East. More imaginative interpretations link the dolmens to Cyclopean engineering traditions of the ancient Mediterranean, suggesting an unknown culture with advanced stonework skills passed through the Caucasus and left its signature behind. Others even claim the round portals resemble early pressure equalizing systems, theorizing that the chambers once held sealed environments for fermentation, storage, or ritual sensory deprivation. Locals weave an entirely different story. They speak of giants who built these stone houses in a single night, of spirits who passed through the round openings to protect the mountains, and of ancient healers who used the dolmens as places of power where the earth's energy could be amplified. And yet, with every excavation and new discovery, the dolmens only become more confusing. A culture with no surviving language, no known monuments except these silent stone chambers, and no clear link to the later peoples of the region. So, the dolmens of the North Caucasus remain one of Russia's most enduring prehistoric enigmas. Thousands of perfect stone boxes scattered across mountains and forests, built with inexplicable precision by a civilization we still cannot identify, aligned to forces and ideas we no longer understand, standing as quiet reminders that entire chapters of human engineering and belief may have existed far outside the official timeline, waiting in the hills for someone to decode them. Gornaya, Shoria, Megaliths. Deep in the remote forests of southern Siberia, where fog settles between endless ridges and winter snow, hides everything beneath a white silence, lies a mountainside so strange that it has challenged archaeologists, geologists, and adventurers for more than a decade. The colossal megalithic blocks of Gornaya, Shoria. At first sight, they look like a natural rock face. But as you climb closer through the pine trees, the illusion dissolves and something far more unsettling emerges. Enormous rectangular slabs stacked like bricks in a wall, some measuring more than 20 meters in length and weighing hundreds, possibly thousands of tons. Arranged in what appears to be deliberate horizontal courses that mimic the architecture of a forgotten civilization.
The sheer size
Of the blocks defies comparison. No known ancient culture, not even the builders of Baalbek or the pyramids, is confirmed to have moved stones of this magnitude. And yet here on a remote Siberian peak, several massive monoliths sit aligned with almost geometric precision, their edges forming corners and straight lines too sharp to dismiss as coincidence. Photographers who first documented the site in the early 2000s captured images of rectangular stones, leaning outward like collapsed fortifications, terraces of polygonal slabs and surface planes so flat they appear machined. Drone footage later revealed angular patterns across the cliff face that seem to interlock like giant cyclopean walls. Geological surveys show the rock is a type of Precambrian granite, extremely hard and resistant to erosion. Yet the surfaces display smooth planes and right-angle intersections, rarely produced by natural processes. Some blocks are balanced on smaller stones beneath, creating gaps that look strikingly similar to the foundation techniques at other megalithic sites worldwide. If natural, the formation is one of the most uncanny geological accidents ever recorded. If artificial, it represents a scale of construction beyond anything attributed to prehistoric cultures in Siberia. But contradictions haunt every explanation. Mainstream geologists attribute the formations to weathering, exfoliation, and tectonic fracturing, pointing to patterns where rock sheets peel off in parallel layers. Yet those same processes usually create irregular, chaotic shapes, not 20 meters rectangular monoliths fitted like masonry. Similarly, tectonic forces fracture granite into blocks, but rarely with the clean edges and stacked appearance seen at Gornaya Shoria. Critics argue that many photos exaggerate the block-like shapes due to perspective. But on-site explorers counter that the blocks are even larger and more structured in person, with horizontal courses extending dozens of meters. Another contradiction is cultural. Siberia during the presumed time frame, anywhere from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, had no record of large settled societies, no monumental architecture, and no technology for quarrying or transporting stones of even a fraction of this size. There is no evidence of habitation, no tools, no carvings, and no surrounding cultural material to support the idea of an ancient city or fortress. And yet the walls exist, too massive to ignore, too orderly, too easily dismiss. These gaps in explanation open the door to a surge of speculation. Some researchers suggest the structure could be the eroded remains of a natural pluton that fractured along perfect vertical and horizontal joints, creating an illusion of design. Others believe the site may be an ancient landslide, where giant slabs broke away and stacked themselves in an improbable configuration. Fringe investigators proposed something much more radical: that Gornaya Shaft may be the remains of a megalithic stronghold built by an unknown prehistoric civilization with advanced stones-shaping abilities, possibly related to the same enigmatic cultures that left cyclopean walls across the Mediterranean and South America. A few theorists point out that the blocks at Gornaya Shoria resemble oversized versions of polygonal masonry found in Peru, Japan, and Easter Island, arguing for a lost global tradition of giant-scale engineering. While others push even further, suggesting these slabs could be remnants of a pre-glacial civilization destroyed during cataclysmic events at the end of the last ice age. More speculative voices imagine even older origins. Megaliths could be the remains of a structure built when Earth's climate and geography were drastically different. Perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, at a time when mainstream archaeology insists no civilization capable of such engineering existed. Some interpret the site as an ancient quarry, others as a collapsed temple or fortress. And a growing number of researchers suspect the blocks were shaped by an unknown method involving heat, pressure, or resonant fracturing. An alternative set of techniques that could explain the smooth surfaces and right angles without requiring the transportation of colossal stones. Local legends speak of the Altai region as a dwelling place of giants, of mountains that once housed divine beings, and of ancient battles where the land itself was shaped by enormous powers. These myths add fuel to the already blazing fascination with Gornaya Shoria. But despite drone surveys, field trips, and international debate, the site remains frustratingly unstudied at an academic level. No large-scale excavation has been carried out, no detailed geological mapping published, and no consensus reached. And so the Gornaya Shoria megaliths remain suspended in a liminal space between geology and archaeology, between natural wonder and impossible construction, between the known world and the forgotten chapters that may lie buried beneath Siberia's endless forests. A wall of colossal stones staring out over the mountains, hinting that somewhere in humanity's deep past, someone or something left behind a monument so vast and so inexplicable that we still cannot say with certainty whether it was built by the Earth itself or by a civilization long erased from history. Vera Island Megalithic Complex, hidden in the quiet waters of Lake Tergoyak in the Ural Mountains, where mist hangs low over the shoreline and the air feels ancient. Even in summer lies Vera Island, a small forested rock that holds one of Russia's most mysterious megalithic complexes, a place that feels less like an archaeological site and more like the remains of a forgotten sanctuary carved into the bones of the earth. At first glance, it looks like a cluster of weathered boulders and simple stone shelters. But as you step closer through the narrow paths and duck under the branches, something far more deliberate and enigmatic emerges. Massive granite chambers carved with precision. Narrow corridors aligned to specific angles and roof slabs, weighing dozens of tons placed at top upright stones, as if assembled by hands far stronger and more skilled than the archaeological record allows. Local historians have long described the structures as ancient temples. Yet the deeper you go into the site, the more questions appear because the scale, layout, and engineering of the complex do not match any known culture in the Urals. Excavations reveal three principal megalithic structures known as megaliths, number 1, 2, and 3, each composed of enormous granite blocks shaped into walls, ceilings, and corridors. Some slabs are over 6 meters long, cut with such straight edges that they seem impossibly advanced for the region's Bronze Age societies. Inside these chambers, archaeologists found polished floors, niches carved into the walls, and traces of red ochre pigment, all hinting at ritualistic functions rather than domestic life. Megalith number 1 resembles a subterranean sanctuary with a long corridor and an entrance oriented precisely toward the rising sun on specific dates. Megalith number 2 includes a carefully carved internal passage that funnels light into the chamber at certain times of year. And Megalith number 3 is built from enormous, naturally split granite slabs that were shaped, trimmed, and reassembled with an accuracy that defies primitive tools. Even more astonishing are the artificial terraces around the island. Enormous retaining walls built from multi-tainted stones forming leveled platforms that look like stages or gathering. Areas suggesting communal rites or astronomical observation. Radiorbon dating of charcoal remnants places human activity on Vera Island around 3,500 to 4,000 years ago. Yet these dates only deepen the puzzle because the indigenous Bronze Age cultures of the Urals were small mobile pastoralists who left behind simple pottery and burial sites. Nowhere else in the region do we see monumental stone construction on this scale. This leads to a series of contradictions that scholars still struggle to explain. If the site was built by local tribes, why is there no architectural evolution leading up to it? No intermediate structures? No surrounding settlements that could support such labor? Why does the site appear fully formed, as if a group with advanced knowledge arrived suddenly, built a complex of precise megalithic temples, and then vanished without leaving any cultural descendants? Geological analysis complicates things even more. Slabs used in the chambers are made from extremely dense granite, and quarry marks around the island suggest that builders removed and shaped stones directly from bedrock, using techniques that would require metal tools. Get metallurgical evidence for copper or bronze tools in this region during the era is minimal. Some surfaces inside the chambers are so smooth they appear sanded or polished, something no one can reconcile with the crude tools presumed to exist at the time. Another contradiction lies in the orientation of the structures. Several passages and openings align with solstice points, equinoxes, and specific lunar events, which implies a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles. Yet nearby archaeological sites show no evidence of advanced astronomy. Why would one isolated island possess an architectural and astronomical tradition unmatched by any neighboring culture? These inconsistencies have fueled multiple layers of speculation. Some archaeologists argue the megaliths were ritual sites created by an early, Uralic-speaking culture that has since disappeared, possibly overwhelmed by later migrations. Others propose that the structures were used by shamans and spiritual leaders who encoded astronomical knowledge into stone, because the sky played a central role in their cosmology. More adventurous researchers suggest that Vera Island may represent an outpost of a wider megalithic networks stretching across Eurasia during the Bronze Age. A network responsible for dolmens in the Caucasus, stone rows in Karelia, and men along the European Atlantic coast. Others theorize the megaliths served as acoustic chambers for trance rituals, pointing to how sounds reverberate eerily within the stone corridors. Some fringe theorists have proposed that the chambers functioned as ancient observatories or initiation halls tied to a priestly class with knowledge of mathematics, geometry, and celestial cycles. While more speculative voices imagine Vera Island as a relic of a pre-Ice Age civilization whose knowledge survived in fragments and was handed down to later. Peoples who preserved the tradition without fully understanding it. Local legends, meanwhile, add another layer. Stories tell of stone priests who gathered on the island to perform sacred rites of beings who carved the chambers with fire and light, and of a hidden treasure or sacred artifact concealed within the granite halls. None of these tales have archaeological proof, yet they persist because the site feels different from anything else in the region. Too advanced, too deliberate, too anomalous to be dismissed as mere Bronze Age craftsmanship. And so despite surveys, excavations, and decades of debate, Vera Island remains one of Russia's most enigmatic megalithic complexes. A cluster of ancient stone sanctuaries carved with unknown tools by an unknown culture for unknown reasons. Sitting quietly on a misty island in a mountain lake, inviting every visitor to wonder whether an entire chapter of prehistoric architecture and spiritual knowledge once flourished here, only to vanish, leaving behind temples whose builders still wait in silence for someone to uncover their story. Khara-Hora Shaft? High in the rugged mountains of Kabardino-Balkaria, where sheer cliffs guard the horizon, and cold winds carry the scent of ancient stone, lies one of the most unusual and least understood megalithic features in the entire Caucasus: the vertical stone shaft of Khara-Hora. At a distance, it blends into the mountain like a natural fissure. But as explorers approach the site along narrow paths carved by shepherds, the illusion gives way to something far more engineered: a perfectly cylindrical pit descending deep into the earth, its walls lined with smooth stone and its opening precisely shaped, suggesting a purpose lost long before recorded history. The first climbers who lowered lights into the shaft reported an eerily uniform interior with surfaces too straight and too consistent to be the result of random tectonic activity. Measuring roughly 2 meters across, the shaft drops dozens of meters into darkness. And at its base, narrow horizontal tunnels branch outward like deliberate corridors cut into the mountain. Geological sampling shows the rock is hard, limestone interbedded with volcanic material, yet the walls inside the shaft are strangely polished, with tool-like striations spiraling downward in a pattern that resembles controlled stone cutting rather than natural erosion. Archaeologists mapping the surrounding cliffs found carved steps leading toward the opening, as well as flattened platforms that appear to have been work. Everywhere around the site are massive blocks that seem detached from the cliffs but arranged in unnatural ways. Some stacked, others fitted together with precise angles reminiscent of megalithic architecture elsewhere in the Caucasus. Make matters more intriguing, the shaft's orientation aligns almost perfectly with a nearby ridge that catches the first light of sunrise during the equinoxes, leading some researchers to suspect an astronomical function tied to the cycle of seasons. Yet the deeper excavators go, the more contradictions they uncover. No known culture in the North Caucasus, not the Mop, not the Kobin, not the later steppe tribes, is documented as digging deep vertical shafts lined with dressed stone. There are no inscriptions, no burial goods, no domestic artifacts, and no clear signs of habitation within several kilometers of the site. The technical challenge alone is bewildering. Carving a straight, narrow, and uniform pit through solid rock would require organized labor, rope-based descent systems, metal tools, and surveying skills beyond what archaeologists attribute to Bronze Age peoples in this region. And yet the shaft exists unmistakable in its artificial symmetry. Some geologists argue that the walls may have been shaped by water erosion along a natural karst, but this explanation stumbles on key details. Karst shafts typically widen toward the bottom and produce irregular scalloped walls, not the straight, smooth, evenly cylindrical form of Khara-Hora. Other scientists propose the shaft might be a collapsed volcanic pipe or chimney, but the surrounding geology does not support recent volcanic activity. Nor do ancient volcanic vents produce the clean geometric lines observed here. And even if the shaft began as a natural cavity, the branching horizontal tunnels at its base defy natural formation altogether. These contradictions have unleashed a wave of speculation. Some archaeologists cautiously suggest the shaft could have been a ritual descent chamber, a symbolic passage into the underworld used by a shamanic culture that later disappeared. Others believe it served as a water collection or storage system, funneling runoff into undergroundists. Though this fails to explain the polished walls or the precise astronomical alignment, a more technological interpretation imagines the shaft as an ancient ventilation system or smoke chimney for an underground complex. Perhaps a shelter or sanctuary with the side tunnels acting as chambers now collapsed or buried. Fringe researchers go further, theorizing that the shaft may represent an early attempt at deep mountain mining using unknown cutting techniques, possibly tied to a lost culture skilled in stone engineering and metallurgy. Some note similarities to the mysterious vertical shafts in Egypt and Guatemala, suggesting a global pattern of ancient subterranean engineering that is yet to be understood. Others interpret the spiral striations as evidence of rotary, tools leading to bold claims of advanced prehistoric technology. Local legends, meanwhile, offer their own stories. Elders speak of a tunnel to the spirits, a place where ancient priests descended to communicate with forces inside the mountain, while another tale describes giants who drilled the shaft too. hide something powerful deep underground. Even modern hikers describe strange acoustic effects. Voices echo in unnatural ways, and stones dropped into the shaft take far longer than expected to hit bottom, as if bouncing off unseen ledges or passing through hidden cavities. Despite several exploratory missions, the full depth and layout of Khara-Hora remain unknown. Flooding, unstable rock, and extreme remoteness have prevented a complete survey. And so, the shaft stands today as one of the most perplexing ancient structures in Russia. A vertical portal carved with inexplicable precision, leading into a darkness that may conceal chambers, tunnels, or secrets that no one has yet reached. Whether it was a ritual gateway, an engineering feat, a mining experiment, or the remnant of a civilization whose identity is still lost, Khara-Hora endures as a silent challenge to our understanding of the ancient Caucasus. A deep echoing reminder that some structures carved into the earth carry stories so old and so forgotten that they remain even now beyond our grasp. Stone labyrinths. On the wind-swept shores of the White Sea, where icy waves roll across the horizon and fog drifts like a living veil over rocky tundra, lies Bolshoi Zayatsky Island, a place so desolate and remote that travelers often describe it as standing outside of time. And yet it holds one of the most enigmatic archaeological landscapes in Russia. A field of ancient stone labyrinths arranged with geometric precision across the ground. At first glance, they appear almost playful, like spirals of pebbles drawn by a wandering artist. But as you walk among them, tracing the long, winding pathways that twist inward for dozens of meters, the scale becomes clear. These labyrinths are monumental constructions, some stretching more than 20 meters across, each built from hundreds of carefully placed stones, forming sinuous, looping lines that always lead toward a single central point. More than a dozen major labyrinths cover the island, along with stone cans, altars, and linear alignments, creating an archaeological complex unlike anything else in northern Europe. Excavations reveal that many labyrinths were constructed during the Late Stone Age or Early Bronze Age, possibly 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, though some evidence suggests even older origins. The stones used are water-smooth boulders gathered from the coastline. Many transported significant distances across uneven ground, arranged in layouts that remain consistent from one labyrinth to the next, a sign of shared tradition or centralized knowledge. These labyrinths are not random spirals. They exhibit mathematical precision with path widths kept uniform, curves repeated symmetrically, and entrances often oriented toward the sea, the sunrise, or specific constellations. Some archaeologists found traces of charcoal and burnt bone within the central points, implying that ritual fires or symbolic offerings once took place. Others discovered that certain labyrinths align with natural features such as tidal pools, suggesting the builders had an intimate understanding of the coastline and its rhythms. Yet as the evidence accumulates, so do the contradictions. There is no clear sign of permanent settlement on the island during the time the labyrinths were built. No homes, no storage pits, no major hearths, indicating that people came here solely for ceremonial or symbolic purposes. But what those purposes were remains unknown. The design of the labyrinths also puzzles researchers. Unlike Mediterranean labyrinths used in mythology or spiritual practice, these Arctic versions do not trap or confuse. Instead, they invite the walker on a long, deliberate journey toward the center, then back out again, suggesting choreography or ritual passage. Some scholars argue they were used in rites of passage or seasonal ceremonies. Yet, the presence of multiple labyrinths side by side, often differing only slightly in size or orientation, hints at a more complex tradition. Another contradiction lies in the uniformity of construction. Several labyrinths follow the same spiral style found across Scandinavia, the Kola Peninsula, and even faraway islands in the Baltic Sea, implying a widespread cultural network of seafaring peoples who've shared symbolic stone-building traditions. But the builders of the Zayatsky labyrinths left no written records, no art, and no burials to explain their identity, leaving a cultural vacuum that has fueled endless debate. Some geologists have tried to argue that the structures might not be ancient at all, but medieval fish traps built by a later inhabitants of the monastery complex on the neighboring island. Yet this theory collapses under scrutiny. Fish traps require openings for water flow and cannot be closed spirals. Moreover, medieval monks left extensive documentation of their activity, and none mention labyrinth construction. These contradictions open the door to layers of speculation. Some archaeologists believe the labyrinths functioned as maps of the cosmos, teaching novices the paths of stars and seasons through walking meditation. Others see them as symbolic passageways for guiding the dead into the spirit world, where the twisting path represents the soul's journey after death. A few theorists suggest they served as ritual mazes walked during solstice festivals, intended to harmonize human movement with the cycles of nature. More esoteric interpretations propose that the labyrinths were used in trance-inducing ceremonies. Walking slowly along the paths while focusing on breath and rhythm could create altered states of consciousness, allowing ancient shamans to enter visions or communicate with other realms. Some fringe researchers argue the layouts match diagrams of energy vortices or geomantic centers, implying that Zayatsky Island was a northern power point used by an advanced spiritual culture. Others take the idea in a different direction, proposing that the labyrinths represent navigation charts for prehistoric sailors. Abstracted maps encoded in stone that show currents, coastal profiles, or celestial routes across the Arctic seas. Local legends add another layer. Fishermen and monks long spoke of stone games of the old people, claiming that the labyrinths were walked to ensure safe journeys or to trap evil spirits in their winding paths. Some say the labyrinths were used to summon favorable winds or calm the sea. Others whisper that the spirals mimic the paths of sea serpents or mythic creatures believed to inhabit the northern waters. But despite all theories, the island remains quiet, its builders silent, spirals untouched for thousands of years except by moss, wind, and the occasional traveler who dares to walk the ancient paths. And so the stone labyrinths of Bolshoi Zayatsky Island remain one of the Arctic's greatest enigmas. Vast prehistoric spirals carved with intent but without explanation, aligned to forces we no longer measure, walked by people we no longer know. Standing on a remote island where time seems to fold just like the labyrinths themselves, looping between certainty and wonder, forever refusing to reveal their final purpose, Arkaim Archaeological Complex. In the wide grasslands of the southern Urals, where steppe winds rush endlessly across rolling plains and the horizon feels impossibly far away, lies a circular settlement so precise and so enigmatic that it has been called the Russian Stonehenge. Arkaim, a Bronze-Age fortified city rediscovered only in 1987, just days before it would have been destroyed by a planned reservoir. What looked at first like a simple ring of earth turned out upon excavation to be one of the most complex and geometrically perfect urban designs ever found from the ancient world. A double-walled circular stronghold built with a level of planning, engineering, and astronomical awareness that seemed far beyond the pastoral tribes historically associated with the region. As archaeologists opened the settlement layer by layer, they found two concentric timber and clay walls, each reinforced with stone foundations, a ring of nearly identical dwellings arranged with mathematical precision. A central plaza lined with ritual pits, and a system of streets and drainage channels that showed a surprising degree of hydraulic and architectural knowledge. Underground furnaces, metallurgical workshops, and ceramic kilns hinted at advanced craftsmanship, while bronze tools and chariot fittings revealed a culture deeply connected to early Indo-European traditions. Even more astonishing was the city's orientation. Arkaim is aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles with an accuracy rivaling major ancient observatories. Certain doorways and windows frame celestial events, while the circular streets mirror the apparent motion of the heavens, transforming the entire settlement into a giant, habitable astronomical instrument. Yet the deeper researchers dug, the more contradictions surfaced. The people associated with Arkaim, often linked to the Sintashta culture, were believed to be mobile herders with small seasonal camps, not city builders capable of precise geometric layouts. No comparable settlement exists in the region before or immediately after Arkaim, suggesting the appearance of a sophisticated urban culture that rose suddenly and disappeared just as abruptly. The site also shows signs of intentional burning. Roofs collapsed inward, walls blackened, and debris layers indicate the city was destroyed in a controlled fire. Its possibly abandoned rather than conquered, which is puzzling given the enormous effort required to build it. If Arkham was a center of ritual, governance, and metallurgy, why would its inhabitants burn it down themselves? Further, contradictions emerge in the artifacts. Some pottery styles seem local, while others show influences from cultures thousands of kilometers away, hinting at trade networks or migrations that mainstream timelines struggle to explain. Chemical analysis of metal objects reveals advanced alloying techniques, including high-quality bronze with controlled tin percentages, unusually sophisticated for a community allegedly lacking cities. The entire settlement appears to have been designed before construction began, with measurements suggesting knowledge of proportional systems and perhaps even early geometry. Yet no written records exist, no precursor designs, and no master plan preserved in material form. These anomalies have opened the door to a wide spectrum of speculation. Some archaeologists propose Arkaim was a ceremonial center for an early Indo-Iranian priesthood, a place where the movements of stars were observed to guide rituals, calendars, and agricultural cycles. Others suggest it was a training ground for chariot warriors, a cradle of Proto-European culture whose innovations later spread. Across Eurasia, more adventurous theories imagine Arkham as a prototype ideal city, built according to sacred geometric principles passed down through priestly lineages that later influenced Persian, Indian, and Scythian cosmologies. Fringe investigators argue that Arsham's city plan resembles mandala patterns from ancient Vedic texts or mirrors astronomical charts embedded in early mythologies. Some claim that the precise circular design indicates knowledge of advanced surveying techniques or even lost mathematics that predate Greek geometry. Others propose that Arkham was part of a broader network of ring cities across the Eurasian steppe, many of which remain buried or unrecognized. A small but vocal group believes the settlement was an ancient observatory built by a culture with an unusually deep understanding of celestial mechanics, perhaps to track precession, eclipses, or long-term astronomical cycles, far earlier than officially recognized. Locals add their own layers of mystique. Modern pilgrims visit Arkham believing it to be a place of spiritual energy, claiming the circular layout channels cosmic forces or enhances meditation. Some legends speak of ancient sages who built Arkham as a gateway between the earthly and celestial worlds, while others imagine it as the birthplace of mythical Aryan ancestors mentioned in ancient texts. And yet, despite decades of study, Arkham refuses to reveal its full story. The city was planned with extraordinary foresight, built with advanced engineering, aligned with the heavens, inhabited for a brief period, and then deliberately set ablaze, all without leaving behind a written language or a direct descendant culture to explain its purpose. So Arkham remains one of Russia's greatest archaeological enigmas, a perfect circle on the lonely steppe. A city that appears and disappears like a mirage in history, hinting that somewhere in humanity's Bronze Age past, there may have been societies with far more knowledge and far deeper mysteries than we ever imagined. Mount Vottovaara, in the remote forests of Karelia, where spruce trees stretch endlessly toward a gray northern sky and mist rolls across silent lakes, rises Mount Vottovaara, a barren, rocky summit so strange that many visitors say it feels like stepping into another world. A place where nature and ancient engineering blur, until you can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. At a distance, the mountain looks unremarkable. But as you climb its twisted slopes, the landscape transforms enormous boulders, balanced precariously on tiny stones. Long stone ridges forming unnatural straight lines. Fissures that appear like cut stairways and clusters of megaliths perched in patterns too deliberate to be accidental. Over 1,600 bizarre setas, sacred stones of the ancient Sami people, dot the mountaintop, many placed on delicate pivot points that allow them to sway slightly with the wind, producing faint vibrating sounds. The summit is also covered with deep rectangular cracks in the bedrock, some stretching tens of meters, forming platforms, terraces, and corridors that resemble the ruins of a collapsed stone complex. Archaeologists mapping the area found stones arranged in circles, alignments that point toward solstice, sunsets, and strange step formations in the granite that look like carved stairways leading nowhere. Radiourban testing on charcoal traces suggests human activity on the mountain more than 4,000 years ago. And Sami oral tradition identifies Vottovaara as a sacred site where shamans performed rituals, communicated with spirits, and traveled between the worlds of the living and the dead. Yet, the deeper researchers look, the more contradictions emerge. Geologists argue that most formations were caused by a powerful earthquake 9,000 years ago, shattering the bedrock into slabs and leaving debris fields that only appear artificial. However, this explanation does not account for the dozens of perched stones placed atop smooth boulders with intentional balance points. Nor does it explain why many megaliths align with astronomical directions, or why some stones form perfect right angles and flat surfaces that look as though they were shaped deliberately. Visitors report smooth-cut faces on certain stones, as if carved with tools and holes drilled deep into granite, features that are extremely difficult to produce even with modern equipment. Another contradiction lies in the sheer number of formations. No other mountain in the region displays anything remotely comparable in density or complexity. If this were purely geological chaos, why does it resemble a megalithic ritual landscape? And why is the mountain nearly devoid of soil and vegetation at the summit while surrounding areas flourish? A pattern some researchers claim align with ancient clearing and intentional construction. These inconsistencies have sparked waves of speculation. Some archaeologists cautiously propose that Neolithic or Bronze Age cultures enhanced natural formations to create a vast ritual complex similar to sacred Sami mountains in northern Scandinavia. Others argue that Vottovaara served as a shamanic pilgrimage site, where the unusual acoustics created by hollow fractures in the rock amplified drums, chants, and whistles during ceremonies intended to induce trance states. More adventurous theorists claim the mountaintop was a prehistoric observatory, pointing to alignments between the stones and major celestial events, while some believe it was an ancient gateway site where shamans symbolically descended into the underworld through deep fractures in the rock. Fringe researchers go further, suggesting the stone alignments resemble those found in megalithic cultures thousands of kilometers away, hinting at shared knowledge or a forgotten northern tradition of sacred stone engineering. Others speculate that the balanced stones are remnants of a lost megalithic practice involving energy flows, seismic tuning, or geomagnetic awareness, citing unusual electromagnetic readings recorded near certain formations. More extreme interpretations imagine Vottovaara as a partially ruined prehistoric temple complex, a relic of an advanced culture, erased by the Ice Age or ancient catastrophes, with the earthquake acting as both destroyer and revealer of an older structure. Local legends fuel the mystery. Karelian folklore describes Vottovaara as a mountain inhabited by spirits, a place where the boundary between worlds is thin. Some stories say the dead walk here on foggy nights. Others claim shamans ascended the peak to leave the physical world entirely. Modern hikers often report strange sensations, sudden silence, disorientation, feelings of being watched, while photographers capture inexplicable fog banks that form and disappear within minutes. Even today, many loses avoid the mountain, saying it has power that does not belong to humans. Yet, despite surveys, expeditions, and satellite imagery, Vottovaara refuses to provide a clear answer. The stones balance but do not fall. The alignments exist but cannot be definitively explained. And the mountain's fractured geometry feels both natural and impossibly sculpted. And so, Mount Vottovaara remains one of Russia's most haunting enigmas. A windswept summit covered in balanced stones and mysterious formations, a place where geology imitates architecture, where ancient rituals left traces but no explanations, where the silence of the mountain whispers the same unanswered question. Whether these patterns were shaped by the forces of nature, the hands of forgotten builders, or something in between,